Dzień dobry Państwu. Nazywam się Anna Czechowska. Jestem certyfikowaną edukatorką pozytywnej dyscypliny dla rodziców i w klasie oraz coachem. Współpracuję ze Stowarzyszeniem Szansa z Targówka, partnerem niniejszej konferencji organizowanej przez Biuro Pomocy i Projektów Społecznych Urzędu Miasta Stołecznego Warszawy. Bardzo jest mi miło zaprosić Państwa na wywiad, który w dniu 29 września przeprowadziłam z Jane Nelsen, autorką podejścia Pozytywna Dyscyplina, autorką czy współautorką ponad 22 książek, w tym bestsellerowej serii o pozytywnej dyscyplinie właśnie, w skład której wchodzą książki Pozytywna Dyscyplina dla dzieci od 0 do 3 lat, Pozytywna Dyscyplina dla przedszkolaków, czy nawet Pozytywna Dyscyplina dla nastolatków. Jane Nelsen jest certyfikowaną terapeutką rodzin i małżeństw, mieszka obecnie w Kalifornii, jest również mamą 7 dzieci, 22 wnucząt, babcią 22 wnucząt oczywiście i prababcią 16 prawnucząt. I jak sama mówi, największe doświadczenie, oprócz swojej formalnej edukacji, czerpała z tego właśnie z bycia rodzicem i z bycia babcią. Serdecznie zatem Państwa zapraszam. So, welcome Jane. I'm really thrilled to have you here and to be able to have an interview and face-to-face interview with you, although online. And I would like to also thank you on behalf of Szansa Association I cooperate with, which is a partner of the conference organized by the Office of Assistance and Social Project of the City of Warsaw. So thanks a lot for being here and for willing to share your knowledge, your experience, and wealth of wisdom.
It is my pleasure. That is one of the advantages of the COVID, is that we can reach each other all around the world by Zoom. And so thank you for having me.
Thank you. So the conference is organized to brainstorm ideas how to best help children up to 3 years old to develop, to gain social and emotional skills, and just to feel safe in the environment they are in. So I would like you to broadly answer these 3 questions. The first one is that, what is positive discipline? Because there are many people who don't know what positive discipline is. What are its basic assumptions? And how can positive discipline help us in taking care of children up to 3 years old? What we should pay attention to, and also how is positive discipline linked to emotional intelligence, and how does it help children learning social and emotional skills?
Well, and I'd like to answer those questions broadly first, and then show some detail in my PowerPoint. And you know, the first question is, positive discipline is a method of parenting and teaching that does not include any behaviorism. It does not include punishment or rewards. There's the 3 kinds of parenting or working with children. One is behaviorism that is based on punishment reward. You know, it's the adult's job to catch the child being, quote, good and give rewards, and catch the child being, quote, bad and give punishment. And the thing is that this works because the punishment usually will stop the behavior for the moment, but it's not very effective long term. There's been so much research that says this is not effective long term. And the other thing is that children love rewards. They really like them. But it is also very not effective at all for social emotional development. In fact, children learn that they don't want to do anything unless they do get the reward. And that is not helpful for them long term. And the other thing is, I taught child development for 10 years at a community college. And one of the things I realized, even though we give positive discipline, is based on what is called the authoritative method, which is respectful to everybody. There's no punishment involved. It really does teach children how to develop social emotional skills. Positive discipline is a social emotional development program that is goes through how parents and caretakers work with children to draw forth and help them learn the social and emotional skills they want. In fact, when I show the 5 criteria for positive discipline, you'll see that they're all to help them develop social emotional skills. And so when I wrote my first book on positive discipline, and you might find it interesting, the reason I wrote that book is because as a parent, I would go through either being too punitive until I didn't like myself, because I don't like punishing children. I don't think most people do. Or so I would then go to permissiveness until my children became demanding, and I didn't like that. So I would go back to being punitive, and I would just go back and forth, and neither one was good for long term. So when I took a college class on child development, and the professor said, I'm not going to tell you a bunch of theories, we're not going to teach you a bunch of theories, we're going to teach you one theory that really helps children learn self-discipline, responsibility, cooperation, problem-solving skills, contribution. And I thought, oh wow, that would be great. But I was one of those, what I call challenging listeners, because I was saying, well, yes, but, because it can be hard to make the shift and give up all punishment and give up all rewards. But you can't ask parents or teachers to give up punishment rewards if you don't show them what else to do. And that's what positive discipline is all about, is what else we do that really helps children develop the characteristics and life skills that involve the social emotional development. So anyway, with my first book, Positive Discipline, which covers all ages in a way, but I thought children under the age of 3 are very different. Their brain development is different, their social, their cognitive is very, very different. And so there are a lot of tools that really are not effective for young children, and to help them, what I want to present in the PowerPoint is Erikson's stages of social emotional development, and Piaget's principles of, emotional development. And so to really understand those, and I want to share some videos and share some examples that will help the parents and teachers in your conference really understand the difference and why, for the brain development, age development of young children under 3, they really have to understand what is appropriate based on lots and lots of research in university child development centers. So would you like me to just start with my PowerPoint to go through this?
Sure, let's do it.
And if at any time, Anna, you want to stop and ask me any questions, feel free to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Get through all of this. We'll just see how much we can do in the time that we have. The first question I always like to ask is, how many of you just really love being a parent and teacher most of the time? And I really do think that most of us do love working with children. That's why we get into having children, or why we want to work with children as teachers or child care givers. But sometimes we don't like it at all. When I was getting my teaching credentials, the thing that we all worried about the most was, how do you deal with misbehavior? How do you deal with the discipline? And so, and the other thing is, why is it so hard? And it's because we have buttons, and guess who knows what they are? So children just seem to figure out how to push our buttons. And whether they're doing it on purpose to get attention or to get power, or whether it's developmentally appropriate. This is what we always have to figure out. And so it's really important for parents and teachers to know that we're not alone. And there's just no such thing as a perfect parent or teacher. And one of the things I really like to emphasize is that even if we use positive discipline tools, that doesn't mean that children are going to be perfect, and it doesn't mean we're going to be perfect. And that's okay, because one of the primary principles of positive discipline is that mistakes are wonderful opportunities to learn. And we want to teach children that too, that, oh, I made a mistake, what can I learn from it? Which is a great social emotional skill for them to learn. So
Yes,
I
and
love to show,
yes, what I notice a lot is that when I lead classes for parents and teachers is that the expectation is that once they have a tool, the misbehavior will stop. And this is exactly what you said, that positive discipline will not stop misbehavior, but it will help us to teach children appropriate skills that are valuable at a given situation.
You know, Anna, I'm so glad that you emphasized that, because if that weren't true, that children will keep misbehaving, it is developmentally appropriate. It's called individuation. It's called finding out who they are separate from our parents. And if we could just teach them skills once, they wouldn't need parents for 18 years. And in the classroom, we could say, okay, I've taught you everything you need to know in a week. Now go out and do it on your own. But they need that mentoring and that teaching and that guidance. And, you know, I like to use the analogy sometimes that you don't expect children to learn to read all at once. They start by learning one word and then maybe a sentence, and they keep progressing in their grade level. And that's the same way with behavior. It's developmental. And, you know, they now know that the brain is not fully formed until about the age of 25. And so that's why they need us. But one other thing that's so interesting to me, Anna, is sometimes parents say, well, I just lose control. I just get so upset. And I say, but you expect your children to control their behavior when you don't control your own behavior.
That's right.
And so also, as parents and teachers learn these skills, they won't be able to do them all the time. You know, sometimes you remember and sometimes you forget, and it depends on your mood and your buttons that get pushed. So what I loved is that when I started using these positive discipline tools, I didn't do them perfectly. But I learned how to apologize, and I learned how to fix it when I made a mistake. Mm-hmm. And that to me was very valuable, because sometimes it was better if I hadn't made the mistake in the first place, because I learned to be very good at apologizing. And you know, some people think, oh, you shouldn't apologize to children. I think it's very important, because when you say to a child, I'm so sorry, what do they say?
I'm so sorry too, usually.
Yes. Or they first say, it's okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. So it's teaching them about forgiveness, and it's teaching them that we all make mistakes, that we all get upset at times. And that doesn't mean that's who we are forever. We can focus on solutions. So that's another theme for behaviorism. What is the problem and what's the punishment or what's the reward? In positive discipline, it's what is the challenge and what is the solution? Mm-hmm. And you know that kids are so good at finding solutions, not as much under the age of 3, but they start getting so good at that as they progress developmentally. But I love this cartoon by Calvin and Hobbes, where he says, here, Dad, I'd like you to sign this form and have it notarized. And Dad says, I, the undersigned dad, attest that I have never parented before, and insofar as I have no experience in the job, I am liable for my mistakes, and I agree to pay for any counseling in perpetuity that Calvin may require as a result of my parental ineptitude. And then there's Calvin sitting in timeout saying, I don't see how you're allowed to have a kid without signing one of those. And you know what's so interesting and funny about this is because it's so true. It's like, what is the most important job in the world? Mm-hmm. Parenting.
Being a parent.
And teaching and childcare. Anything that has to do with mentoring children and guiding children is the most important job in the world.
And often, I would say the most difficult one, because we are dealing with a human being, right?
Yes, and often the lowest paid, you know, the most important job. And I know that when I was getting my teaching credentials, we loved working with the curriculum, but we were all scared to death. What are we going to do with the behavior? We did not know what to do when a child misbehaves. And that is also one of the reasons that so many teachers are quitting the profession, or because it can be hard. But I would have just loved having these tools. And when I was going through my teaching experience, and the thing is that that's why we don't tell people what not to do unless we give them lots of tools to what to do instead. So that's what positive discipline is about. And it's based on the work of Alfred Adler and Rudolf Dreikurs. And that's why it's based on a very solid foundation, a philosophy. And that philosophy includes the basis is that people should be treated with dignity and respect, all people, including children. And that research keeps validating what they've taught. You know, there's even so much brain research now that validates the kind of discipline that we talk about in positive discipline, which does not mean punishment. You know, some people think discipline means punishment, but it does not. It comes from disciplini, which is to teach, or a follower of truth or principle. So we just love it that the brain research keeps proving that all the tools that we teach are what help children learn the social and emotional development that we want for them. So I want to just share some of those basic principles. The primary need of all children, of all people, but we're talking about children today, is the need for belonging. It's a basic need. And belonging translates into love, or what we call in positive discipline, connection before correction. They always need to feel that sense of belonging. And the other primary need is for significance. And I think that this is where all the social emotional development skills come, is you can't give children significance, but you can help them develop it. You can give them love, but you can't give them significance. That's where they need the social emotional development to develop responsibility, capability, and what I'm going to be showing you in a little while, how important it is to contribute to society. And that it's always based on dignity and respect, both kind and firm at the same time, and that mistakes are opportunities to learn. And that the encouragement is that we're always focused on solutions. We're not looking for blame, we're not looking for punishment, we're looking, you made a mistake, what can we do to fix it? So every single tool comes back to these basic principles. So, you know, I like to point out the no-nos is no punishment, no permissiveness, no rewards, no praise. Now that surprises some people, but there's been a lot of research that shows that children who are praised have lower self-esteem, and they're afraid to do things or try new things because they might not be able to get the praise. So no pampering, no rescuing, no punitive time out, no taking away privileges of punishment, no bawling them out and then bailing them out. And even though this is an example of an older child, I'd like to give you an example of what I mean by no bawling them out and no bailing them out. Suppose your child loses their homework or their book bag, and they come home and they say, oh, I lost my book bag. And what do most parents do? Well, if you would be more responsible and take better care of it, then you wouldn't lose it. And how many times I have to tell you, you just got to, and they just scold and scold and scold. And then they say, but I'm not going to buy you another one because you just need to learn, maybe that'll teach you if you just go without. But pretty soon they change their mind and they're driving them to the store to buy another one, but they're still lecturing. Saying, I'll buy you another one this time, but you've got to be more responsible. I just can't believe it that you don't take better care. And so what does this teach a child? It teaches them just to tune out.
That's right.
They know that pretty soon it'll be over, and then they can, they'll buy them a new one. So what would a positive parent, disciplined parent do? The child comes home and says, oh, I lost my book bag. And the parent would just say, oh, I'm so sorry. Period. That's the hardest part, is then to just shut your mouth and not say anything more.
Yes.
And the child might say, but aren't you going to buy me a new one? Well, honey, Not right now. I'm sure you can solve this problem. And usually the child will look harder or he'll figure out something else. And then later you might sit down and say, well, you know, maybe you could here's some things you could do to earn money to buy a new one in a nice, kind and firm way without the blame and shame.
Yes, but in those situations, parents usually feel that if they don't do something, they are bad parents. They are not helping their children in any way, but they are just, you know, letting them be.
Exactly. But if you look at what I said is they just don't say anything. Well, no, you can say I'm sorry, which is showing empathy and is being supportive. But to not lecturing and shaming is doing something really big. And then later letting them figure out how to solve the problem is huge, because children are usually so clever. It's amazing how often they will find it if we don't jump in to rescue them. And if they don't, then you can still sit down with them and figure out, okay, what could you do to earn some money? So it's not that you don't do anything. It's just that you don't blame and you don't shame and you don't punish. Instead, you teach them social emotional skills. And punishment is designed to make children pay for their mistakes. But positive discipline is designed to help children learn from their mistakes. And I'd really like that to sink in because it is so important. And one of the things is that we use a lot of curiosity questions to help children explore the consequences of their choices. Like, what happened? What do you think caused that to happen? What could you do? And I would like to give the example of, let's just say, in a 3-year-old, and one of the 3-year-olds has hit, let's even take biting. That's one of the things that really bothers people, is biting. Instead of punishing that child for biting, you can take that child, and some people really have a hard time with this, but I say, take the child who did the biting first and say, you know what happened? You know, little Susie's over there crying, but you say, look at Susie, what do you think happened? And he says, well, I bit her. How do you think she's feeling? Well, sad. And can you think of what we could do to help Susie feel better? I don't know. Well, what about some ice? Do you think it would help her if we gave her some ice? And he starts saying, okay. And I say, okay, well, let's go get some ice and let's help Susie feel better. So what you have done is helped him to see, he's still not connected. His brain has not developed enough to connect it completely. For a child at that age, you want something, you can't get it, you hit, you bite, whatever. But you're teaching him so that he will help with the healing and help Susie feel better, which is a much better skill than just punishing him. Often because developmentally in the brain is not sure of what happened anyway. So again, just because I'm so against punishment, here are the 3 R's of punishment. Children either get rebellious, they can't make me, I'll do what I want, or they go into revenge. I'll get even and hurt back, even if it hurts my future. Now here again, I'm going to skip to older children again, because the thing I've noticed a lot is there are a lot of children who are rebelling against their homework because they think their parents care more about their homework than they do about them, and that hurts. So sometimes they'll not do it or not do it good enough to get even if it hurts their future. And I think we need to understand that. Or they retreat either into low self-esteem where they think, I must be a bad person, or they get sneaky, I just won't get caught next time. So we always need to be looking at what is the long-term results, what are we really teaching our children? And they're different, they're all making different decisions. And I love this from Haim Kanat. When a child hits a child, we call it aggression. When an adult hits a child, we call it hostility. When an adult hits an adult, we call it assault, but when an adult hits a child, we call it discipline. You know, I like that to sink in, because it's just not respectful to hit another person in the name of love. And here's one of my famous quotes from Positive Discipline. Where did we ever get the crazy idea that in order to make children do better, first we have to make them feel worse? You know, does that make any sense at all when you think about it?
No, it does not.
Because I always ask adults, how do you feel when somebody humiliates you and puts you down? You don't say thank you, that's so helpful. Children do better when they feel better, when they can access their rational brains. And are you familiar with the work of Dan Siegel?
Yes.
And see, he is one who has shown us so much about what this means, that when children feel punished, they usually go into their irrational part of their brain, not the rational part of the brain, so it's not really helping. But you know, then we have to really let people know that we're not talking about permissiveness, because permissiveness is very disrespectful. It teaches children that I'm the center of the universe, and I'm not capable, and I can't survive disappointment. So they don't learn to develop their disappointment muscles, and they believe love means getting other people to take care of me. So we need to really avoid parenting, and I love to share the example of the little boy with the butterfly. And what this story goes, that this little boy was watching the butterfly try to break out of the chrysalis. And as he watched that butterfly struggle and struggle, he decided he would help. So he breaks open the chrysalis and is so delighted as he watched that butterfly fly off into the sky. But then he watches in horror as it falls to the ground and dies. And what happened? The butterfly did not develop its muscles so that it could survive, so that it could fly. And that is our job, is to help children develop their disappointment muscles, their problem-solving muscles, so that they can develop the perception that I am capable. And so what do? We come up with lots and lots and lots of different tools that all help children develop what they need. So I do want to share the 5 criteria for positive discipline. It's respectful, it's both kind and firm at the same time. And it helps children feel belonging and significance. It's effective long-term, not just short-term, like punishment and rewards. And here we get to the social-emotional. Does it teach children valuable social and life skills for good character? And does it invite children to discover how capable they are and to use their power constructively? Now, every single positive discipline tool has to meet all of these criteria. So let's just talk for a minute about kind. That is what helps children feel belonging and significance. No, belonging. That's what helps them belonging. Firm is what helps them feel significance, the responsibility, the capability. So this is why they have to be balanced. That's why we need to have both kind and firm. So I love this example. I love it when I can find cartoons that show the example. Here the mom is saying no, and the little boy says yes, and she says no, and he says yes. She picks him up and gives him a hug. And she says no, and he says okay. And then he says the hugging no is no fair. Isn't fair. But the truth is, sometimes children aren't ready for a hug, but when they are, it can just change things so much. I know that my children have used it with their grandchildren so often, so they just say, I need a hug, and the children will say, okay, 9 out of 10 times. So here is where we get to the children under 3 specifically, and how important it is to understand child development and age appropriateness. And that children do not understand no the way you think they do. Because I always ask, how many of you have seen a child just look back at you and defy you as they go to touch something they know they're not supposed to touch? It's because they are little scientists, little explorers. That's what really does help their brains develop. So, and if you really understand child development age appropriateness, you don't, I like to do the Piaget demonstration. And since I can't demonstrate it here, it is when you take 2 balls of clay that are exactly the same, and you smash one flat, and then you ask the child, first of all, you say, are they the same when they are the same? But when you make one flat, the child does not know they're still the same. They think that the round ball is bigger because they just can't conserve in that way, or whatever the word it calls. And you know, the other example I like to give of this is one mother told me, she said, I have to spank my child to teach him not to run in the street. It's a matter of life and death if I have to teach him. And I said, well, okay, let me ask you this question. After you have spanked your child to teach him not to run in the street, will you now let him play in front of a busy street unsupervised? And she says, well, no. And I said, well, what if you spank him 100 times? Now that you've spanked him 100 times to teach him not to run onto the street, will you now let him play in front of a busy street unsupervised? And she asked us, well, no. Why not? Because in some instinct, she knows that this child has not developed judgment and the kind of responsibility to be safe. And so this is what's so silly, that sometimes if parents really thought about it, they would know that they're not really teaching their child. So I have, what are the main, let's see, this.
If I can butt in, from my perspective, very often the punishment is just a feeling of helplessness. The parent feels, or the caretaker feels, that I need to do something, and this punishment is, it's like available at hand. So that's why we very often do it, because we have no other tools.
Yes, I am so glad that you pointed that out. I'm sorry, I thought I had turned that off.
That's okay. We will cut it out.
Okay. What you're saying is just so important, and that's why we have to do these kind of conferences to teach parents and teachers that, because when you punish a child, that child is more likely to run into the street looking to see if you're coming instead of to see if a car's coming. This is just why it's so important at this age, that this is what they, under the age of 3. But here's the main tools you use with children under the age of 3. Supervision, and some distraction, and some redirection. And those really aren't the only tools, but they are the main ones. And there are ways to distract, there are ways to redirect. Just like the example I gave of the child who has bitten another child. But it's interesting that the minute they turn 4, something happens in that brain where they are just the best problem solvers. And that's why by the age of 4, you want to get them involved in family meetings and class meetings where whenever there's a problem, you ask the kids what the solution would be, because they're so good at it. But with children under 3, they just need more distraction, limited choices. It's time to leave now. Do you want to hop like a bunny or swing your arms like an elephant tail? So elephant's trunk. So, but always being both kind and firm. And the other thing is to teach without expecting understanding. And what I mean by that is, so you take this child and you're walking on a busy street and you come to a corner and you say, look up the street and tell me when it's safe. Look this way and tell me when it's safe. So you're starting to teach them to think about those things, but you still don't let them go by themselves until they're much older. It's the same as teaching them how to share. It's like, what are the things you want to share and what are the things you don't want to share, and how can you, if you don't want to share, how could you maybe find that child something else or use a timer? But sometimes we expect children to share and blame them and shame them if they don't, even when we as adults don't always want to share everything. So we're always teaching. So let's go back to Erik Erikson's developmental stages. Birth to 1, they're developing trust versus mistrust. And this is even before, this is the pre-verbal. So it's just a sense of trust or a sense of mistrust. And this is why it is so important at this first age that they get a lot of that connection, a lot of that attachment, it's called, even though Adler was the first to call it belonging, and now it's called attachment. And it is the primary need. And so children need a lot of this feeling of attachment to develop that sense of trust. And between the years of 1 and 3 is when they're developing autonomy or doubt and shame. I didn't put doubt and shame, but it's doubt and shame. And this is what are they developing when we punish them?
Doubt and shame.
Not initiative, or not autonomy. It's the 3 to 6 that they start developing the sense of initiative versus guilt. And this is one of the reasons why, I like this one. A child who's sitting in timeout in this way, facing the corner, what are they developing?
Shame.
Autonomy or doubt and shame? Doubt and shame, of course. And, then parents say things like, you sit in the naughty chair. That even, they're deciding, I must be naughty. Or you think about what you did, which is one of the dumbest things you can say to a child, because they're not thinking about what they did, they're thinking about what you did. So this timeout, which is one of the most popular discipline methods, if it's done in a shaming, blaming way, is just not effective. But in positive discipline, we call it positive timeout. And what we do is we get the kids to help create it. Now, often children under the age of 3 are still maybe too young. When they maybe 2.5, I've heard some people, 3-year-olds. I've heard some parents say, and teachers say it works, but they get to create a place that helps them feel better, that helps them learn to calm down and access their rational brain. So then you let kids decide what to call it. They get to call it whatever they want. And they can call it their feel-good place, their cool-off spot, space, sparkles. And then you don't send them. You ask, would it help you to go to your feel-good place? I wanted to show you, this is what one preschool did. They created a stuffed grandma that children could go sit on her lap if they wanted to feel better. Because the idea of positive timeout is for social-emotional, for self-regulation, to teach them that it's okay to go to a place where they feel better. But if you say, you don't say you go to your timeout until you feel better, that's still punitive. You would say, would it help you to go to your timeout? And they might say no. Then you say, would you like me to go with you? And why not? You probably need it too. And if they still say no, say, well, I think I'll go to my timeout because I need to wait till I feel better, so you model it. But I just love this for younger children rather than so against that punitive timeout that is blaming and shaming. And sometimes just waiting until they feel better is enough, but sometimes you might need to ask them, so, what happened? What do you think caused it to happen? What could you do to solve the problem? And as they get older, to put the problem on the family meeting or class meeting. Because a child who is discouraged from developing initiative sometimes responds by developing manipulation. So we want to help them develop initiative. Oh, this is going into Erickson's stages of development. So how do children develop the perception I'm capable? And even Adler said, and Dreikers, never do anything for a child that a child can do for himself. And I want to give you an example here. This is my 2-year-old, maybe he was 2.5, grandchild, who was trying to put his t-shirt on, his brother's t-shirt actually. And I always like to ask parents or teachers, how many of you would want to run in and help? Every hand goes up.
A lot would raise their hands.
Yes. And I say, and especially now, here he is still struggling. How many of you can stand it or just want? Well, my daughter, because she was learning about that you shouldn't do things for children. She, instead of running in to help him, she ran to get her camera. So that's why she got these pictures. And so here's another picture of him still struggling, even though he got one arm through the wrong hole. And then finally he finds at least the head hole with that big grin on his face. And there he is, he finally made it. And look at that feeling on his face. You know, so he has been developing the belief, I'm capable, I can do it, and I can struggle. It's not a bad thing. In fact, he's not thinking of it as struggle, he's just trying to figure it out. And so it's really a big challenge for parents and teachers to know when to sit back and let the child figure it out.
So it's very often our perception that the child is struggling while they're just can be having fun, right? Or learning and playing with that.
Exactly. And parents, in the name of love, or teachers thinking, oh, I'm helping, instead of thinking, no, I'm hurting this child's developmental skills of feeling capable. So, you know, sometimes my things at the top, so I can't see very well, but one, I'll just skip that one for now. So allow children to suffer. It's not okay to make them suffer, but allow them. For example, a child might really suffer if they can't have the toy they want. And it's okay. You can avoid rescuing. You might show empathy. This is another tool you can use so much with little children, is to say, oh, I know you really want that toy. I'm so sorry you can't have it now. And wait for a moment of calm and then focus on solutions. Like when my children were very young, I would give them enough money that they could maybe buy 1 or 2 ice creams a week from the ice cream man. And if they didn't have any money left, I'd say, oh, that's so sorry. How long before you get your next allowance? And they would figure it out. We would figure it out together on the calendar. But let them know that, yes, they might suffer because they can't have everything they want. But you don't do blame and shame. You do empathy. And so preschoolers are so capable. And when a child needs for autonomy is thwarted, they often develop lasting feelings of shame and doubt that override their impulse towards self-determination. So sometimes parents and caregivers with the best intentions mistakenly try to control or shame a child into toilet training, eating, or sleeping. You know, I think I told you that we finally wrote a book on positive discipline the first 3 years, and
yes.
Positive preschoolers. And one of our favorite chapters is sleeping, toileting, and eating. You can't make them do it. And so you figure it out respectful ways to work with them. It doesn't work it invites unto attention of power struggles or revenge, and can cause the child to assume inadequacy. So in other words, don't do things for children that they can do for themselves. They need encouragement like the plant needs water. I just want to point out that belonging and love without significance and responsibility teaches entitlement. And significance, you know, some people will be really strict with their children and they learn a lot of responsibility, but they don't feel loved, and so they feel a sense of loss of self. So that's why they need both belonging and significance to have the characteristics and life skills for success. Now, I know that our time is maybe...
Yeah, we have a couple of more minutes to finish this off.
Because I want to show this one because I think it is so important. Gemeinschaftsgefühl is a word that Adler coined in German because it means so much. I don't know how well it translates into Polish, but in English it's hard to translate, but it just means concern for one's fellow man and wanting to make a contribution, a social feeling. And I really believe that children are born with this desire. And 2 German researchers, Tom Masello and Warneken, proved this through some of their research, that children 18 months old want to give, they want to contribute, and they called it altruism. It's the same as Gemeinschaftsgefühl. I want to show you these two videos because they are so adorable in showing. In this first one, the researcher is putting pins on a clothespin, and the 18-month-old child watches, and when he drops it, you'll see what he does because he wants to help. I have seen that 1,000 times, and it's so delightful to see that child just be so excited and satisfied that he has been able to help. And so the next one is this time the researcher's trying to get books into a cupboard, but the door is closed. So watch closely what the 18-month-old child does. Oh, wait a minute, wrong one, I gotta go back here. And see, this is the kind of initiative and desire to contribute that we rob children of when we jump in and do too much. And just like learning to talk, even though they're born with this capacity to want to share, it has to develop. We have to keep giving them opportunities to contribute. And, but don't you just love that? Even though it's just a statue, the little guy wants to help. And even though there is so much more to share, Anna, I think that our time is coming to an end, and I just wonder if I could even stop sharing, and you could just see if there are any other questions you wanted to ask.
Yes, I was thinking about if you were to say just two main advice to people working with young children, what should they pay attention to? What they should keep at the back of their heads? Always, constantly.
Well, I would say, first of all, they need some knowledge. You know, it's like, just like we go to school to learn important jobs, I think they need to take child development classes and learn about Piaget and developmental, so that they just know one of the questions should be, what will help this child the most long-term, not just short-term? They need to learn skills. Parents and teachers need to learn the skills, just like of how are the best ways to teach the children the skills. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many parents have loved positive discipline, and because it gives them those skills. I know that's why it was so thrilling to me, is because it helped me so much to help my children that I wanted to share it with other people. And so I think that one of the big questions is, what is the best for this child at this age, long term, not short term? And the other is, if I want my child to control their behavior, I need to learn to control my own.
And I think this is the most difficult part of on our part, right? That we need to also develop to be a good parent or to be a good caretaker.
Right. And so I think that parents and teachers need to learn to take time out. You know, one teacher said, when she was teaching the kids about time out, said, I can't leave the room, but I've got this little inflatable palm tree, and when I need some time out to calm down, I'm going to put it on my desk so you'll know I need some time. And the kids respected that, and so she was also modeling that sometimes I get upset, I need to wait until I can calm down.
Yes, and this is really helpful, that when we think about children, they really want to help us and they really want to cooperate, but we need to give them a chance to do that and to be patient enough to do that.
Right, and the other thing is, I really think that, especially with children under the age of under three, they need to ask, is this misbehavior or is this developmental? Is this just developmentally appropriate behavior where the child just really needs to explore and test, and they might feel cranky, and you know, it's not easy, but it's like when you have a better understanding and you just want to treat the child with dignity and respect. And sometimes that means they may need to cry. Let them have feelings. Too often, parents and teachers don't let children have their feelings and just say, I can see you're really upset right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Jane. Thanks a lot for sharing your wisdom, for sharing your knowledge, for coming here to be with us. And I would like to thank you also on my part. And it was really very deep for me just to listen to a person who created that model, to created that method that I'm also using as a parent. So thank you a lot.
You're welcome, and I have a lot more, so there's a lot more to learn, and so sometimes people might want to go to, I know that they're teaching a lot of positive discipline classes in Poland now that really helps parents learn. And I just want to say one reason, the reason it has become popular in different countries is because we don't just give lectures like I'm doing right now. Get parents and teachers involved in experiential activities where they role play the child and they role play doing the skills, and so they really learn from within themselves what is effective and what is not effective long term. So thank you so much. It was my pleasure being able to talk all the way from California to you all the way in Poland.
Okay, so it's like early morning at your place, and here it's like almost night because it's almost 9 p.m. So once again, thank you, and maybe see you soon.
Thank you, Anna. Bye-bye.
Bye.